The Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Pride Seeds, Cruiser Max Vibrance Beans, High Stick NT, and the Manitoba Pulse and Soybean Grower.
So here we are today at the Outdoor Farm Show, getting lots of questions on when our combine's going to start rolling, finding a few areas where guys are starting to combine soybeans. You know, getting asked, number one question, what's the yields like? Or what do you think the yields are going to be like? So we do a fantastic job, and I find it very easy myself to go and estimate corn yield. You know, pick those cobs, get an average length, girth, and then number of plants per acre with a dividing factor. But you know what, one of the tougher ones I've always found is to try and estimate a soybean yield. Now there's some excellent formulas that you can use in order to estimate soybean yield, which will get you pretty accurate, but it is still only as good as the samples you're taking. So the factor is we want to look at a 21-inch row, so 21 inches of row, count the number of plants. So if you're in a 30-inch row, you're going to count one row, 21 inches. If you're in 15-inch rows, you're going to count 2 rows of 21 inches. And if you're in 7.5-inch rows, you're going to count 4 rows, 21 inches. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look for an estimated number of beans per pod. So this is where it takes a little time. You're going to count those pods. 2.5 is kind of an average factor, but I think this year, definitely looking in a lot of the soybean fields I've been in, we have a lot more 3s and 4s than I've seen in quite a while. So you'll count the number of pods, average them out by the number of beans per pod, and then what we need to do is use a dividing factor of how many beans in that bushel is there going to be. So beans in the pound. So a big bean, you would use 15 as your factor. So that's kind of that 2200 beans per pound. 18 is kind of the average that we'll use, so an average size soybean. So that's 2500 or a little bit more beans per pound. Now we are in some areas where it's starting to get a little bit dry, so we're kind of losing some seed weight there, shrinking those seed size. So in that area we'd maybe go upwards of 21 and use that as our dividing factor. So I myself use the Purdue field guide to work through this, because I'm not always good at remembering what that formula is, but we look through that and then you work through and you can estimate your soybean yield. So that's the quick and short, dirty way in order to estimate a soybean yield. I will say it's going to be only as accurate as the sample spots you're taking. So, you know, don't go to the best spot and don't go to the worst spot, but try and find an average spot and count a few different spots. So since we're out estimating soybean yields and taking a look at those fields, it's also an excellent opportunity to kind of assess that soybean field, figure out if you've got any issues that could be a future problem. So one of those issues, which is a constant buzzword right now in most of Ontario, is do you have glyphosate-resistant fleabane or a fleabane problem? Because now in the fall is an excellent time to manage that or get started managing that problem, and then maybe finding a new chemical program for yourself leading into next year. Number 2 thing, white mold. Have you got mold issues? Last year was a huge issue for mold. Again, go through, do some variety assessments. How did that variety do on mold? How does this variety do on mold? Also, one of the things as we move east and north of Toronto that we haven't really had problems with and seems to be something we're going to have to deal with a lot more, cyst nematode pressure. You know, if you start to see some dips and valleys in your field, maybe a good time to take a soil sample and get a cyst count. The last thing that we need to look at, especially in the Southwest with soybeans, is SDS, or sudden death syndrome. It's fast becoming a big problem for many soybean growers. It's always been a U.S. problem we've heard about, but that disease is quickly moving its way through the province. So look at, ask about ratings on those soybeans, and look at your own fields and see if you have issues. So with that, get out in those fields, take a look around, give a shot at doing some yield estimates and see how close you can get.